Before I tell you about Cleveland, I need to tell you about the war. Because you cannot understand what happened in that stadium, on that ship, in that burning city, without understanding what we were up against. It began in 2525, a colony world called Harvest. Population 300,000. Farmers mostly. People who had left Earth to build something new on the edge of human space. They were the first to make contact with the Covenant. They were also the first to die. The Covenant glassed Harvest from orbit, turned the entire planet into a sheet of molten rock. 300,000 people gone. We sent a fleet to investigate. The Covenant destroyed it. We sent another fleet. They destroyed that too. For 27 years, the pattern repeated. Colony after colony, world after world. The Covenant advanced through human space like a fire through dry grass, and we could not stop them. We could barely slow them down. UNSC tried everything. Conventional warfare, guerrilla tactics, diplomatic overtures that the Covenant ignored. And then they tried something else, something that would change the war. They tried the Spartans. The Spartan program. Children taken from their families, trained from the age of 6, augmented, enhanced, turned into something that was still human, but barely. They were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced, and even they could not stop the tide. By 2552, humanity had lost hundreds of colonies, billions of people. The UNSC's military headquarters, the planet Reach, had fallen. Earth itself was under siege, and I was a hotel concierge in Cleveland, Ohio, trying to figure out how to get through another Tuesday. Life is strange that way.
They tell you that time heals all wounds, that the memories of the Covenant War fade with the rebuilding of our cities. They are wrong. I close my eyes, and I am still there. Cleveland, Ohio. Earth. The year 2552. Before the Master Chief finished the fight, we were just trying to survive the start of it. My name is Ruan, and this is the story of the Key of Osinalan. It started with fire in the sky. The Covenant didn't just invade. They descended like the wrath of angry gods. I was a concierge at a downtown hotel. An ordinary life, shattered in an instant when the plasma torpedoes hit the skyline. Buildings that had stood for a century crumbled in seconds. The streets turned to rivers of glass and ash. And the screaming never stopped.
I was at the front desk when the emergency broadcast came through. Every screen in the lobby lit up at once. The civil defense system. The one we'd all been told about but never expected to actually hear. The tone was 3 long pulses. Covenant contact. Confirmed. Incoming. I remember the faces of the guests. A businessman from Atlanta who had been checking out, his briefcase still in his hand. A family from Columbus, 2 kids in matching jackets, the parents frozen mid-argument about directions. An elderly woman who had been complaining about the coffee. All of them looking at the screens. All of them understanding at the same moment what that tone meant. None of them moving. I had done the drills. The UNSC had run civil defense exercises in every major city for years. We knew the protocol. Underground shelters, subway systems, reinforced basements. We knew what to do. But knowing what to do and actually doing it when the sky starts to burn are two very different things. The first plasma torpedo hit the financial district. I felt it before I heard it. A vibration in the floor, deep and raw, like the earth itself was flinching. Then the sound. Not an explosion exactly, more like the sky being torn open. Then the light. Through the lobby windows, the horizon turned white, then orange, then black with smoke. The second torpedo hit closer. The window shattered inward. I dove behind the front desk. Glass everywhere. The chandelier fell. The power went out. And then the screaming started. Not just in the lobby, outside, everywhere. The whole city screaming at once. That sound never leaves you. I hear it sometimes. The quiet moments before sleep. 27 years later, and I still hear it.
Rowan! Keep your head down! The glass is shattering from the upper floors!
That was Myris Tyla. I didn't know her then. Just another face in the lobby. But while the rest of the city panicked, she was like a stone in a raging river.
We can't stay here. The building's structural integrity is failing. We need to move to the subway tunnels. Now!
We ran. The streets were a nightmare of screaming civilians and the deafening roar of Covenant dropships. Phantoms. We didn't make it to the tunnels. They herded us like cattle into the municipal stadium. Thousands of us. And then, the brutes arrived.
She found me behind the front desk. I was still on the floor, covered in glass, trying to remember how to breathe.
Are you hurt?
I don't think so. I don't know. What was that?
Covenant plasma torpedo. 2 of them. The financial district is gone. We need to move.
She pulled me to my feet. She was calm. Not the calm of someone who wasn't afraid, but the calm of someone who had decided that fear wasn't useful right now. There's a difference. I've learned to recognize it. Where do we go? The shelters are in the subway. We need to get to the subway.
The subway entrance on Euclid is 3 blocks east. But look at the street.
I looked. The street was a river of people. Thousands of them. All moving in different directions. All terrified. All in the way. And above them, the Covenant dropships. Phantoms. Long, elegant, purple and silver. Descending through the smoke like predatory birds. They were beautiful. In a terrible way. The Covenant always were.
We can't go east. The dropships are landing on Euclid. We go north, through the parking structure, then cut through the convention center. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to the Red Line station.
How do you know that?
I work for the city. Emergency management. I've memorized every underground route in Cleveland. Now move.
We ran. Through the lobby. Through the shattered glass doors. Into the chaos of the street. The air tasted of burning metal and something chemical I couldn't identify. Covenant energy weapons. The smell of the world ended. We made it 2 blocks before the Phantom started deploying troops. The brutes came down in grav lifts, landed in the middle of the street with a sound like fire. 7 feet tall, armored in bone and metal, carrying weapons that looked like they were designed by someone that had never heard of mercy.
Silence, human filth! You are alive only because the prophets demand information. Where is the key of Osan Alan? Speak now, or I will begin killing you one by one until someone does.
The stadium held maybe 40,000 people on a good day. They packed 60,000 into it, standing room only in the truest sense. The brutes had swept the streets in a matter of hours, rounding up everyone they could find. Children, the elderly, UNSC personnel who hadn't made it to their posts, civilians who had been hiding in their apartments. All of us herded into that concrete bowl and told to wait. The waiting was the worst part. The Covenant didn't explain themselves. They didn't tell us what they wanted, not at first. They just stood at every exit, weapons raised, and let the crowd's imagination do the work. And human imagination, when it is afraid, is a very dark place. I heard people praying, every religion, every language, all at once. A murmur that rose and fell like breathing. I heard people crying. I heard a man near me reciting his children's names over and over like a rosary. I heard a woman singing very quietly to the baby she was holding. That one was the hardest to listen to. Tyler and I stayed together. We found a spot near the south bleachers, close enough to the maintenance corridor that I could see the door. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. But she was watching everything. The brutes, the exits, the other prisoners. Cataloging, planning. I recognized the look. I'd seen it on UNSC officers before. The look of someone who was already 3 moves ahead. After 6 hours, the brute chieftain arrived. He was different from the others. Larger, older. The armor he wore was ceremonial, covered in the bones and trophies of things he had killed. He walked through the crowd like it didn't exist, and the crowd parted for him the way war parts for a stone. And then he spoke.
Do you know what they're talking about? What is the key?
I know. Because the key of Osinolon wasn't a Forerunner artifact. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't even real. It was a lie. A story my brother James and I made up when we were kids playing in the backyard. We were 10 years old. We never imagined it would matter. Then what are you going to do? I'm going to use it.
Millions of miles away, on the red dust of Mars, my brother was paying the price for that lie. Colonel James Ackerson, a hard man, a soldier to his core. He had been captured by the Covenant, tortured for anything that could give them an edge over humanity. But James was not the kind of man who broke easily. He was the kind of man who turned his chains into weapons. Mars, the red planet, humanity's second home. By 2552, it had been colonized for over 3 centuries. Cities carved into the rock, domes over the plains. A population of nearly 1 billion people. When the Covenant came to Earth, Mars was their first stop. A staging ground. A message. We are here. We have found your home. And there is nothing you can do. James had been stationed at a UNSC intelligence facility in the Hellas Basin. When the Covenant overran the base, most of the personnel were killed in the initial assault. James was taken alive. The Covenant had learned by then that UNSC officers sometimes knew things worth knowing. And James knew a great many things. The interrogation lasted 3 days. I know this because the UNSC recovered the facility's security logs after the war. I read them. I wish I hadn't.
did to him in those 3 days was methodical. The Covenant were not cruel for the sake of cruelty. They were efficient. They had techniques refined over centuries of warfare against dozens of species. James held out for 3 days. Those people would not have lasted 3 hours. On the 3rd day, I told them about the key of Osinawan. And I know, because I knew my brother, that he had been planning to tell them from the very beginning. He was waiting for the right moment. Waiting until they were desperate enough to believe it. Waiting until the intelligence value of the lie outweighed the cost of telling it. That was James. Always calculating. Always 3 moves ahead. Even in a torture chamber on Mars, he was playing the game.
You are a stubborn creature, Colonel Ackerson. Your fleet is ash. Your defenses are broken. Your colonies burn one by one. Tell us the location of the key of Osinalan, and perhaps your death will be swift. Refuse, and I will ensure it is not. You want the key? It's on Earth, in Cleveland. Go ahead and dig for it, you zealot freaks. You'll never find it. You are lying. Then why are you still asking?
James knew what he was doing. He knew the Covenant would glass the entire planet if they thought it was empty of value. By telling them the key was in Cleveland, he bought Earth time. He bought us time. He turned a childhood fantasy into a shield for humanity. My brother, the soldier. My brother, the hero. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time James Ackerson would ever speak to another human being. The things we do for the people we love. The things we do for the species we belong to. James gave everything, and he never asked for anything back. Back in the stadium, the brutes were losing patience. Executions were starting. They dragged people out of the crowd at random, and the screams echoed off the concrete walls. Tyler and I had maybe 10 minutes before they got to us. We had to move. The stadium's electrical systems were old, pre-war infrastructure, barely maintained. I knew the building. I'd worked events there for years. The breaker panels were behind the bleachers, in a maintenance corridor most people didn't know existed. We crawled through the crowd on our hands and knees. Every second felt like an hour. Every brute that turned our way felt like a death sentence. But we made it. And when I threw that breaker, the whole stadium went dark.
The moment the lights went out, 60,000 people became 60,000 variables. Some froze, some ran, some screamed, some did all 3 simultaneously. The brutes, for all their size and power, were not prepared for the chaos of a panicking crowd in total darkness. That was our window.
South exit. 30 meters. Stay low and stay behind me.
What about the others?
We can't help them if we're dead. Move!
We moved, on hands and knees through the dark, through the forest of legs and feet, through the noise and the heat of 60,000 terrified people. I lost count of how many times I was stepped on. I lost count of how many times I nearly lost Tyler in the dark. I kept one hand on her ankle and kept moving. The maintenance corridor was exactly where I remembered it. 30 years of working events in that stadium, and I had never once been grateful for the institutional knowledge until that moment. I found the door by feel, the handle, the keypad. My access code still worked. Small mercies.
Through here. The surface tunnel runs under the east bleachers. It comes out in the parking structure on Lakeside Avenue.
And
then we find a vehicle. Can you drive? I can drive. Good. Because I can shoot. Let's go.
the service tunnel was dark and smelled of old concrete and
motor oil. We ran it in silence, guided by the emergency lighting strips along the floor. Behind us, through the walls, we could hear the stadium. The brutes shouting in their language. The crowd. And then, after a few minutes, gunfire. We didn't stop running.
We found an abandoned warthog in the streets. I drove. Tyler manned the turret. The engine screamed as we tore through the ruins of my hometown. Every block was a battlefield. Every intersection was a graveyard. Covenant Banshees! 3 o'clock! Keep the wheel steady, Ruan! Don't you dare swerve! I see them! How many? 4! No, 5! I've got 2 of them. Keep driving! The heavy machine gun tore through the alien flyers, but there were always more. We were cornered near the industrial district. Burning vehicles blocked every road. The Banshee circled overhead. And then, the sky opened up.
The Warthog was a UNSC M112 light reconnaissance vehicle. Military surplus. Someone had left it running in the parking structure. Engine idling, keys in the ignition. I chose not to ask why. The M12 was designed for military use, but it drove like a truck. Heavy, loud, the kind of vehicle that announces itself. Not ideal for sneaking through a city full of alien soldiers. But it had a mounted M41 machine gun on the back, and Tyler climbed into the gunner seat like she'd been born there. I didn't ask about that either. The streets of Cleveland were a maze of abandoned vehicles, collapsed buildings, and Covenant patrols. I drove by memory. 20 years of living in that city, knowing every shortcut, every back alley, every route that the GPS would never suggest. We were making good time. And then the Banshees found us. Covenant Banshees. Single-pilot atmospheric fighters. Fast, maneuverable, armed with plasma cannons and fuel rod guns. 4 of them coming in low over the lake, following the heat signature of the Warthog's engine. I heard them before I saw them. That high-pitched whine, like a dentist drill scaled up to the size of a fighter jet. Then Tyler opened up with the M41, and the night turned into a light show.
A squad of orbital drop shock troopers fell from the sky. Their drop pods crashed into the pavement around us like hammers of God. They hit the ground running, laying down a wall of suppressing fire that cut through the Covenant pursuit like a blade through paper.
Civilians in the Warthog! This is UNSC forces! Drop your heads! We've got you covered! Don't shoot! We're friendly! I can see that! Now get that vehicle behind the barricade before I change my mind! Move it!
We skidded behind a collapsed overpass. The ODSTs formed a perimeter around us, their battle rifles blazing. For the first time in hours, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Safe.
Safe behind UNSC lines. I had to make a choice. I told the brass the truth about the key. Every word of it. The childhood game. The made-up artifact. The lie that had somehow become the most important piece of intelligence in the entire war. They were quiet for a long time after I finished. Then the intelligence officer leaned forward and said something I'll never forget. She said, "We can use this." The plan was simple. Brutal, but simple. The Covenant believed the key was real. They believed it was in Cleveland. If someone could get aboard their command ship and confirm the key's location, the Covenant would concentrate their forces in one place. And while they were distracted, a UNSC orbital defense platform would fire its magnetic accelerator cannon at the ship's position. The only problem was the someone. Someone had to volunteer to be the bait. I raised my hand before they finished the sentence. The UNSC Field Command Post was set up in a parking garage on the west side of the city. Generators, holographic displays, officers moving with the controlled urgency of people who know the situation is bad and have decided to be professional about it anyway. sat me down in a folding chair, and a woman in an Oni uniform asked me to start from the beginning. I did.
Let me make sure I understand this correctly. The key of Osanalon is not a Forerunner artifact.
No.
It is not a weapon. It is not a location of strategic significance.
No.
It is a fictional object from a game you and your brother invented as children?
Yes.
And the Covenant have committed significant resources to finding it. They have held 60,000 civilians hostage for it. They have interrogated and tortured a UNSC colonel for it.
That's right.
Remarkable. Mr. Ruin, I need you to understand something. What your brother did was not just brave. It was strategically brilliant. He gave the Covenant a target. A false target. And now we have an opportunity.
What kind of opportunity?
The kind that only comes once. The Covenant believe the key is real. They believe it is in Cleveland. If we can get someone onto their command ship, someone they believe actually possesses the key, we can use that ship's position for a precision mech strike. We eliminate their command structure over the city in one shot.
The person on the ship when the Mac fires?
Would need to be very lucky. Or very small. We would embed a targeting beacon. There would be an escape pod. The odds are not favorable. But they are not zero.
I'll do it.
Ruan. You can't do this. It's a suicide mission. They'll kill you the second you step on that ship.
James gave them Cleveland to buy us time. I have to finish his play. The UNSC has a plan. They're embedding a targeting beacon in me. When I'm on their command ship, they'll fire the Mac gun.
And you'll be on that ship when they fire it.
That's the plan.
Then I'm gonna write a song about this city. About what we did here. So people remember.
Tyler looked at me. There were no tears, just respect. The kind of respect that soldiers give each other when words aren't enough. She was already composing in her head, I could tell. Finding the melody for something that hadn't happened yet. I walked out into the open, hands raised, and waited for the Covenant to find me. They didn't take long.
They beamed me up in a column of purple light. One moment I was standing on the broken asphalt of Cleveland, and the next I was inside the Covenant cruiser. The air was cold, wrong. It smelled of ozone and something organic I couldn't name. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent light, blue and violet, like the inside of something alive. The Covenant didn't build their ships, they grew them. Brute guards flanked me on both sides, their armor massive and ceremonial, gravity hammers maglocked to their backs. They didn't need to touch me. The weight of their presence was enough. I was marched through corridors that hummed with power, past windows that looked out onto the burning city below. My city. I kept my eyes forward. I kept my breathing steady. And I kept my hand pressed against the small of my back, where the UNSC surgeons had embedded the beacon beneath my skin. 48 hours. That was how long the signal would take to lock. I just had to stay alive that long. The Covenant cruiser was called the Purity of Devotion. I learned that later from the after-action report. At the time, it was just the ship, the place I had chosen to die. The interior was nothing like I had imagined. I had expected something cold and mechanical, something industrial. Instead,
It was almost organic. The walls curved like the inside of a rib cage. The floors were smooth and slightly warm underfoot, like standing on living tissue. The light came from everywhere and nowhere, a soft blue-violet glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was beautiful. I hated it for being beautiful. The brutes led me through corridors that grew wider as we moved deeper into the ship. We passed chambers I couldn't identify, rooms full of equipment I had no framework to understand. We passed a viewport, and I looked out at Earth below. From up there, you couldn't see the fires. You couldn't see the craters. You couldn't see the people running in the streets. From up there, it just looked like home. I pressed my hand against the small of my back. The beacon was there, beneath the skin, a small hard lump about the size of a thumbnail. The surgeons had told me it would take 48 hours to fully synchronize with the orbital defense platform's targeting system. I had been on the ship for 6 hours. I needed to stay alive for 42 more. The Brood Chieftain's throne room was at the heart of the ship. A circular chamber, high-ceilinged, hung with the trophies of 100 campaigns. Skulls, weapons, standards from defeated enemies. And in the center, on a throne that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of alien stone, the chieftain. He looked at me for a long time before he spoke. I looked back. I had decided, in the elevator on the way up, that I was not going to show fear. Not because I wasn't afraid. I was terrified. But because James hadn't shown fear on Mars. And if he could hold out for 3 days in a torture chamber, I could hold out for 42 hours in a throne room. The least I could do was try.
They kept me in a holding cell for most of those 42 hours. A small room, a cot that was sized for a grunt, which meant it was too short for me by about a foot. A single viewport looking out at the stars. No food, no water for the first day. On the second day, a grunt brought me something in a container I couldn't identify. I drank it. It tasted like copper and something sweet. I didn't ask what it was. I thought about a lot of things in that cell. I thought about James, about the backyard where we grew up, about the game we used to play, the two of us, with sticks for swords and a cardboard box for a castle. The key of Osinalan. We had invented it one afternoon when we were bored. James had said it was a Forerunner artifact that could open any door in the universe. I had said it was hidden in a volcano. We had argued about it for an hour. I smiled, alone in that alien cell, thinking about two kids arguing about a made-up thing. I thought about Tyler, about the way she had looked at me when I volunteered. Not with pity, not with admiration, with something more complicated than either of those things. The look of someone who understood exactly what you were doing and why, and respected you enough not to try to talk you out of it. I thought about Cleveland, about the hotel, about the guests I had checked in and out over the years. The regulars who always asked for the same room, the families on vacation, the business travelers who barely looked up from their phones. Ordinary life, the most precious thing in the universe, and we never know it until it's gone. On the morning of the second day, the brutes came for me. The beacon had synchronized. It was time.
The Brute Chieftain stood before me. He was even larger up close. 7 feet of muscle and armor and ancient rage. He looked at me the way a predator looks at something too small to be worth killing quickly. The human who claims to hold the key. You have one chance to speak truthfully. Hand it over, or I will peel the flesh from your bones and use it to decorate my throne.
The key isn't an object. It's a location, a coordinate. And you're standing right on it.
What do you mean?
I mean, you should check your sensors. Right now. The alarms began to wail. Every system on the ship lit up red. The brute's eyes went wide. And I smiled. For James. For Cleveland.
The Mac round from the orbital defense grid hit the Covenant cruiser at 17 kilometers per second. I know that because I read the after-action report. At the time, all I knew was light. Pure, white, absolute light. Then heat. Then silence. They should have died. By all rights, I should have burned with them. But a localized shield failure in the ship's starboard section threw me into an emergency escape pod right before the main reactor detonated. The pod was designed for Covenant troops, not humans. I barely fit. But it worked. I came down in Lake Erie. The pod sank. I swam. I had never been a strong swimmer, but I swam that day. The UNSC recovery team pulled me out of the water 3 hours later. Hypothermic, burned on my left arm. Alive. Alive.
While we fought in the dirt, the real war was happening above us. Aboard the Forerunner Dreadnought, a ship so ancient it predated human civilization by 100,000 years. The Master Chief was fighting a one-man war against the Prophet of Truth's personal guard. He had been captured, interrogated, and he had escaped, because that is what Spartans do. The Dreadnought was on a course for Earth. Unstoppable, irreversible. The Chief couldn't change the destination. He couldn't disable the engines. He couldn't call for backup. So he did what Spartans always do when the situation is impossible. He improvised. The Master Chief had been aboard the Forerunner Dreadnought for hours by the time I was taken to the Covenant cruiser. He had fought his way through the ship's interior with nothing but the weapons he could take from the enemies he killed. No backup, no extraction plan, no guarantee of survival. Just a Spartan and a mission. The Prophet of Truth's guard was the best the Covenant had. Elite warriors, veterans of 100 campaigns, soldiers who had spent their entire lives in service to the Covenant religion, willing to die for the prophets without hesitation. The Master Chief killed 47 of them. I know because Cortana counted. He found the Prophet in the ship's control chamber. Truth was preparing to escape. He had a Phantom waiting, a personal transport, ready to take him to Earth's surface. The Chief got there just as the Phantom was lifting off. He fired. Missed. The Prophet escaped. Any other soldier would have considered that a failure. The Master Chief considered it a temporary setback. Into the hull of the Dreadnought, he looked at the planet below. He calculated the trajectory. Picked up the base of the hull, using the firelight.
Cortana,
The Prophet is escaping. I'm taking the shortcut.
Cortana! The shortcut is a 2-kilometer freefall through the hull of an alien ship traveling at suborbital velocity. There is no heat shield. There is no parachute. The math on this is very bad.
I've got a piece of the hull.
That's your plan? A piece of metal?
It worked before.
It absolutely did not work before. You were barely alive when they found you. Chief, I am strongly advising against...
Noted. Hold on.
He jumped 2 kilometers of free fall, using a piece of alien metal as a heat shield. His Mjolnir armor absorbing punishment that would have vaporized an ordinary human being. He fell like a meteor into the jungles of East Africa. The impact crater was 40 meters wide. He walked out of it. That was the Master Chief. That was the man who stood between humanity and extinction. While the rest of us were running and hiding and doing what we could with what we had, he was jumping out of alien spaceships with a piece of scrap metal and a prayer. I never met him, but I owe him everything. We all do. James died on Mars. When the brutes on the surface realized the key was a fabrication, when the cruiser over Cleveland was destroyed and the deception was exposed, they took his head. That was the Covenant way. Betrayal met with execution. But James had known that was coming. He had known from the moment he first spoke the words Key of Osalanen to the brute interrogators. He had made his choice, with full knowledge of the cost. Colonel James Ackerson, UNSC Marine Corps, decorated officer, my brother. He saved Earth. Not with a gun, not with a fleet, with a lie we invented in a backyard when we were children. I think about that a lot. The way the smallest things can become the most important things. The way a child's game can echo across the stars and change the fate of a species. James never got to see what he saved, but I see it every day. The war ended in December of 2552. The Master Chief finished the fight. The Covenant was broken. The Flood was contained. The Halo array was never fired. Humanity survived. The rebuilding took years. Cleveland was one of the first cities to come back. There was something stubborn about that city. Something in the water, maybe. The people who had survived the occupation came back. They cleared the rubble. They rebuilt the streets. They planted trees in the craters. They opened the hotel again. I went back to work. Some people ask me why. Why go back to the same job, the same desk, the same lobby? After everything that had happened, after everything I had seen and done. I told them it was because I liked the work. It was true. But the real reason was simpler. James died so that ordinary life could continue, so that people could check into hotels and argue about directions and complain about the coffee, so that children could grow up in a world where the worst thing that happened to them was a bad day at school, not a Covenant plasma torpedo. If I stopped living that ordinary life, if I let the war take that from me too, then what had he died for? So I went back. I checked people in and out. I remembered the regulars. I made sure the coffee was good. I lived for James, for Cleveland, for all of us who made it. The UNSC gave me
general shook my hand. The photographer took a picture. I put the metal in the drawer and got home. It's still there. I have a memory of telling me about the years along in the backyard of the summer.
I heard Tyla's song for the first time 3 years after the war ended. She had become something of a figure in Cleveland by then. A survivor. A symbol. The city had adopted her the way cities adopt the people who refuse to leave when things get hard. The concert hall was new, built on the site of the old one that the Covenant had destroyed. It seated 2,000 people. Every seat was filled. She came out alone. No band. Just a woman and a guitar. She looked exactly the same as she had in the stadium. That same stillness. That same quality of being completely present in the moment, whatever the moment was. The song was called The Key. It was about a city, about a lie that became a shield, about a brother who gave everything. She never mentioned James by name. She never mentioned
Rowan! I wasn't sure you'd come.
I wasn't sure either. The song's beautiful, Tyla.
It's true. That's all it is. Sometimes that's enough.
We stood there for a moment. Two of us. In a backstage corridor that smelled of new paint and fresh wood. Two survivors in a rebuilt city. Two people who would run through the streets of Cleveland together and come out the other side. She hugged me. I hugged her back. And then we went our separate ways. The survivors do.
There is a memorial wall in Washington, D.C. Not the old one, the new one, built after the war. It lists the names of every human being confirmed killed in the Human Covenant War. The wall is 4 miles long. 4 miles. They used the smallest font they could print legibly, and it is still 4 miles long. I have walked it twice. The first time, I was looking for James. I found him in the 3rd section. Ackerson, James, Colonel, UNSC Marine Corps. I stood there for a long time. I didn't have anything to say. I just wanted him to know I had come. The second time, I walked the whole thing. Whole 4 miles. I read names as I walked. Not all of them. You cannot read all of them. But I read as many as I could. Farmers from Harvest. Soldiers from Reach. Civilians from New Mombasa. Children from colonies whose names most people have already forgotten. Every name was a person. Every person had a story. Most of those stories will never be told. The war was too big. The loss was too vast. We cannot hold all of it. But we can hold some of it. We can tell the stories we know. We can say the names we remember.
We can refuse to let the weight of the loss crush the meaning of the sacrifice. That is why I'm telling you this story. Not because I'm a hero. I am not. I was a hotel concierge who got lucky and had a very brave brother. That is all. But the story is true, and true stories deserve to be told. Especially the ones that happened in the places no one expected. In the stadiums and the surface tunnels and the burning streets of ordinary cities, where ordinary people did extraordinary things, because there was no one else.
Tyla survived. She finished her song. I heard it once, years later, in a rebuilt concert hall in what used to be downtown Cleveland. The city had come back, slowly, imperfectly, but it had come back. The song was called The Key. She never explained what it meant. She didn't have to. The Covenant War took everything from us. Our cities, our colonies, our families. 27 years of fire and blood and loss on a scale that human language was never designed to describe. But it didn't take our spirit. It didn't take our ingenuity. It didn't take the stubborn, irrational, magnificent human refusal to give up. We are humanity. We remember the fallen. We rebuild what was broken. We carry the names of those who didn't make it home. James Ackerson. We carry them forward. This has been the audio adventures of Halo Legacy Collection. End of transmission.